From. Welcome to our conversation on exploring robotic process automation with Automation Outcomes and Thompsons Solicitors. I'm Caroline Hill, I'm Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider, and welcome whether you're listening to this, you may be listening to it live in our webinar, or you may be listening to it recorded or as a podcast, as an audio file. So welcome however and wherever you're listening in from. If you are listening live, please do enable the chat function. Please do shout out where you're listening in from. We'd love to hear from you, love to see your names. And we're going to be here. We're here to answer any questions during the live conversation. So just put where you are as you come into the room, and then shout out throughout as you've got any questions for the guys. I'm going to do some introductions. I'm joined. We have three great people on this topic. We've got Gavin, who is co-founder of Automation Outcomes. Hi, Gavin.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Do we do a little introduction?
I'll go through everyone, and then we can do more introductions if you like.
Okay.
We've got Mark Barrett, who's a director at Automation Outcomes. Hi, Mark.
Hi, afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are.
And we have Peter Ketterborough, who, last but not least, I should say, who's head of IT and business process at Thompsons Solicitors, who's been working with Automation Outcomes to automate his billing processes. Hi, Peter.
Hi, and good afternoon, everybody.
So thank you so much for joining us. We just a bit of housekeeping. So as people, if you are listening in live, we'll just allow people to come in. We are offering a free, the royal we, Automation Outcomes, is offering a free task automation to people who attend the call. I'll repeat this for anybody who isn't with us just at this minute. I'll repeat that in a couple of minutes just to make sure that everyone's heard. But we'll provide details of that at the end, and it's potentially worth up to 5 days of time. So it's something really worth sticking around for. And Mark will be providing information about that at the end of the webinar. Gavin, did you want to say, did you want to do more introductions? Oh, you're on mute.
Standard nowadays. I thought you were passing over me just to give a bit of background in my experience. I'm 7 years in RPA. Before that, I was a SQL analyst and a data management person. RPA, I've worked in UiPath and Blue Prism now for over 7 years. I've been up and down the country for some large financial companies, legal companies, health trusts, and I've saved hundreds of thousands of hours implementing robotic tasks and giving time back to teams and picking up the morale in those teams, because humans are not robots, and the way systems have been designed, it ends up ultimately making people robots, which is not the best thing for people. So let's pull the robot out of the people, give it to the systems, give the people more rewarding work to do.
Yeah, agreed.
That summarised really succinctly what we do.
Peter, do you want to say a bit before we're going to dive into Mark's going to run through some slides. We normally have a fairly techie audience, and we appreciate that people know what RPA is, but we thought we agree that it was really be worth going through a bit of a deep dive into what is RPA. But before we do that, Peter, do you want to say a bit about your background just quickly, because you've got a very interesting background?
I don't know about interesting, but I've worked in legal IT for probably over 25 years now. I know I don't look it, but I have. And I've been in Thompsons just over 8 years now as head of IT, and put in lots of new systems over the last few years. Case management, we're doing a lot of work in our finance systems at the moment, and really brought the firm up into the standard that it is needed to be at. So we've gone through a massive change process and quite a lot of investment. And one of the opportunities that we spotted through all the work that we were doing was the use of RPA for some of the volume processes that we do. So do you want me to talk about the business, Caroline, a bit?
No, it's okay. Do you know what? I do definitely. But before I come on to that, I'm going to talk to you about the business and the challenges. But Mark, do you want to just run through just a little bit in terms of an introduction about RPA and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. So what I wanted to do is just give, we don't always assume that everybody knows what RPA is as a technology as well. So I just wanted to give a quick introduction to RPA. So yeah, there's many types of automation. So a number of people, especially what we've seen in the legal market, macros and scripts that have been running to fill out forms, fill out documents quickly for people. So that's one type of automation in the market space. And it's what we're talking about has really moved on a lot from there. There's also automated workflow, so legal systems, matter management systems, finance systems that have a certain amount of the process baked into them, but they don't necessarily deal with the end-to-end process. And also, actually, we're running a lot of applications that may not have the processes optimized the way that we want them to work these days. There's digital transformation, which is a massive term as well. And RPA, or robotic process automation, is taken in the context of digital transformation, but it's a way of helping organizations transform processes by using existing applications without actually the time and investment in digital transformation. But we do say digital transformation is actually part of the roadmap and the full journey. So we do encourage people to look at that as the long-term goal for what they're doing. And there's a number of excellent videos out there as well around what digital transformation is and how you can work on that and move towards that as well. And robotic process automation really is a technology that brings all these applications, your existing apps, your existing processes together, and allows you to automate existing tasks without actually having to do the investment, but also allow you to cover the broader range of technologies, applications, services, and departments that you need to. The problem there is, there's a number of studies being, and this is a good one from Deloitte, around 20 to 52% of time is spent, to Gavin's point earlier, of people acting like a robot. They're doing unnecessary repetitive tasks. And actually more and more is being asked of people, and they're not actually being able to spend the time on doing the higher value business stuff, because actually we don't have enough time, because we've still got these 300 or 200 whatever tasks to get through as well. So robotic process automation is actually software that acts as a virtual assistant, imitates what people are actually doing within the application, and frees people up from that time and task. And you can either have it as something on the desktop where they can press a button and can actually do the task for them, or you can have it as a background running process that actually just completely offloads the task and frees people up to actually spend more time on doing the things that matter. That was excellent. Thank you. I just wanted to give a quick overview of that.
No, I really appreciate it. I think it's worth doing, to be honest with you. And we can come back if anybody's got any questions for Mark at any point during the conversation, just put it in the chat. So Peter, talk about this. I'd love you to talk about Thompsons. So in terms of, obviously you handle a huge number of cases. I've got it down as 30 to 35,000 cases a year, but tell us a bit more about the type of firm it is, and the work that you do.
Okay, so we're a long established, 100 years old last year, claimant law firm, basically. We represent only claimants and mainly trade union members. So we've got a vast array of trade unions that we represent their members and the trade unions themselves in various disputes and discussions. So the bulk of our work is workplace accidents, employment rights issues, and we also do a small amount of criminal work. So those are the three main sort of work streams that we cover. And as I said, acting for the individuals only. So we don't get any conflict by acting for corporates on any of the work. Because of the nature of the work, a lot of it is personal injury, low value accident work. And we are been affected significantly by various changes in legislation around the MOJ and the OIC small claims over the last couple of years that have come into place, where we operate through portals on the web to settle the claims. So that's thrown a whole new set of challenges for the business, and moving very much to a fixed fee environment. So when you're moving into that type of work, and you are not paid for, you're not paid for the time you spend on the cases. You move on to the fixed fee regime, it becomes vital that you're handling the cases efficiently. So we use case management systems, which help our fee earners manage what some firms will see in very large volumes of cases. It's significantly more than other corporate firms they will have on their caseloads. But that's why the case management system is very important in helping managing their workloads, their tasks, their priorities, and that's instrumental to the firm.
And like many firms, I think because you use Matasphere, Thompson Reuters Matasphere.
Yeah, so it's the Thomson Reuters Matasphere system that we've got on all the desktops, and we've developed that quite significantly to develop very bespoke workflows and tasks.
Yeah, and you're adherent, aren't you, in terms of, because I know we're going to talk about, it's relevant because we're going to come on to talk about billing. So you're adherent, adherent expert.
Yeah, our practice management system is adherent. That being in the firm long time pre my joining the firm over 8 years ago, I introduced Matasphere and brought the Thomson Reuters Matasphere system in, but Adherent was already in as a practice management system, so that was something that we inherited. And we're actually doing a big project with them now to upgrade it to the latest sort of cloud-based release. So yeah, we use two different products from two of the major suppliers in the legal industry, Thomson Reuters and Adherent. That's history, some of that's history as well. But we're quite happy with both systems.
Okay. So let's talk about the before and after in terms of we're going to come on to the after in a minute, but let's talk about we've already done the after. Let's do the before. Talk about some of your processes, because like most, I would be so brave as to say most firms, the process that you were previously using was very manual and, dare I say, very inefficient. I think you'd say this, be the first person to say this. Talk us through, before the selection process and using RPA, what your processes were.
Yeah, so as Thompsons as a business, we've got about, I think it's 17 different offices throughout the UK, but we've got a central processing team for finance. IT is a little bit more distributed with people around the country, but that makes for quite difficult and challenging management, being so distributed. And so, we're having a lot of communications coming from all these different branches into one central finance team in our Harrow office, and that was all via forms and emails and things coming into there, and then they were obviously creating processes and bills and everything else that they would do as a result of that. But say they were coming in from all these different offices throughout the England, Wales and Northern Ireland,
and very manual, very much like so you'd have a fee earner who would initiate the process and then send it to admin. Yeah.
So fee earner to admin to finance send the pre-bill back to get approved to then go back and things. So we're working on these continually to improve them. But said one of the key things was around this duplication of data and rekeying of data. That was really obvious when we started to look at the issues that we've got.
And Gavin, I think it's fair to say that's, you've been doing RPA for years and years, that's pretty normal, I imagine.
Yes, it is. Robots are very sensitive. You need to map these things down to keystroke level, and a lot of things can sort of hit them out if they're not designed well and you haven't got enough time with SMEs.
Yeah. Okay. So certainly within the law firms that I speak to, that's still extremely normal in terms of very inefficient processes. Right. So you began speaking with automation outcomes in the summer of 2019. So I think what was it that you were looking to achieve when you first spoke to them? In fact, do you mind actually, can I just jump in, because I want to encourage questions. I know for people listening in on the recording, I'm actually going to read out the question. I'm going to encourage people to ask as we go, if that's all right with you guys, just so that we can get everyone to start asking their questions throughout. So I'm going to come on to the selection process, but thank you to everyone. So I can read out the name. Seema Vara, thank you so much for asking a question. So have you found any RPA opportunities in the joiners, movers and leavers process?
Yeah, if I could take that one, Caroline. Yeah. So
yeah, of course. Sorry, yeah.
We have, it's a big use case actually. You know, there's horizontal and there's vertical. So the vertical ones are very legal specific. The horizontal solutions happen across almost any industry. You know, we've worked in legal, we work in the NHS as well, which has a massive throughput of staff as well. In legal, one of the main use cases when there are trainees coming on, and those trainees have to move between different departments to get experience in those different departments. So it's not just the process of joining, and the stats are it's about 10% of the workforce comes through leaves and joins in an organisation. So you can easily calculate the size of the problem and how many people you're having to do and how much time and effort is involved in doing that. So yeah, absolutely. We've dealt with the joiners, so provisioning people, putting them into the right departments, provisioning their systems, their access to systems, their security, their compliance, but also with people moving around teams in legal training and getting experience of different departments. So provisioning them onto the relevant systems and then decommissioning them from the relevant systems as they move around. And we've had a legal firm that said that's a particularly big problem for them as well. So it's one of the use cases we were going to mention a little bit later, and it's certainly one of the big use cases, not just in legal, but across every organisation.
Yeah, I should say, apologies if you're listening to this on the recording, because obviously this doesn't apply, but I should, for those of you who weren't here with us live, the guys are offering a free automation task to those of you who are attending this call. So if you do stick around, and we'll give you those details at the end. And Andrew Wingfield has asked, this is slightly tangential, but it comes up a lot. And did you, fair question, Andrew, did you have any concerns about moving to the cloud?
Did we have any?
Yeah, did you have concerns about moving to the cloud? It's slightly, you know, it's a question that is coming up a lot at the moment, but obviously not just.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and all the software vendors are creating cloud products and cloud services, SaaS service models and everything else like that. It's definitely the way that our business is going, the industry is going, and yes, it has to be done with concern and with consideration as well. But I think that's the evolution, that's where we're going, and as long as you take all the necessary precautions and do all your projects and your planning correctly, you should be okay. I mean, everybody's using Office 365 and things now, so you know but you know, you just got to try and do it properly. I think we're not there with this one yet, but we're well on the way. So maybe I'll tell you in 6 months' time.
I'll take the next quick question, then we'll get on to your selection process. But so Andrew also asked, why do panelists think law firm systems are out of date? That's me that said that. We did a survey during the pandemic to ask about how people were coping with digitization, particularly given that they weren't allowed to be in the office. And some of the workarounds were pretty incredible, including couriering mail around, dropping it off, you know, like kind of desk side, roadside drop off. There were all kinds of incredible non-digitized solutions to what really needs to be a digitized, truly digitized solution. So that I mean, I'm not saying that all firms are doing that, and some are very evolved, particularly perhaps in insurance. But yeah, that was me saying that. Right, so let's talk about summer of 2019. What were you looking to achieve, Peter?
Summer 2019.
I first started speaking to automation outcomes, when you first started looking to automate your billing process.
Yeah, so we dipped our toe in the water with the new iPath and automation on a small project looking at DocuSign, where we were sending out documents for signature and things like that with it. So we got a little bit of familiarity around that. But then the finance team came to us and talked about the volumes of work that they were doing and they were processing. So we then took that on to start looking for a partner to work with, that we could start to address some of the problems in finance. And once we saw how they were doing their work, this huge amount of rekeying and emails flying around backwards and forwards, it was obvious that there was a good use case there for automation. It wasn't rocket science, to tell you the truth, the way that they were working.
So what was let's just jump straight into the process. So the thing for me that I find really interesting is, and I've written an awful lot about this, it's been written about you have to look at the process before it, and this is not just with RPA, this is with anything. You have to understand your processes, and then try to make them more efficient before you can start to automate them. I think one of the biggest mistakes among law firms that I've seen, and that's been widely talked about, is trying to slap technology on top of unstructured disaster. Again, someone's going to ask that in the questions, aren't they? Why are law firms disastrous? I am being negative. So what process did you go through, or what tell me about the steps that you took in terms of understanding the processes that you use and starting to unpick them?
I mean, like I said, a particular area in billing, that was a key bottleneck area. Obviously, billing is critical to any law firm, and getting your bills out in an efficient way, affects cash flow and everything. So that was an obvious point of concern when we see the volumes that have been handled. And a lot of them are very simple because, as I said, we do a lot of fixed fee work. They're very simple bills, really, but they would be manually rekeyed and processed. So it wasn't difficult to identify some key areas where we could try and make some improvements and free that time up in that team to spend on more value add activities. I think that's going to be a key theme running through this, because there was lots of other things that they could do that are more useful, but there was just the pressure to get the churn out. So that was a really obvious area that we wanted to address.
Thanks. I've just realised that in the chat I'm only messaging the panelists. Apologies about that. We've got a question from John Whitlow. Thanks, John. Thanks for joining us, John. Is there a particular technology that's deployed when working with automation outcomes?
Yeah, so John, so thanks for joining, and missed the start where we're talking about the types of automation technology. We focus very much on robotic process automation. So the automation technology that imitates users and interacts with existing applications, existing data and existing processes. We help optimize those processes, but RPA is the area that we focus on and look at. There are a number of vendors out in the marketplace. We do a lot of work with Automation Anywhere, but within Thompson's case, it's UiPath. In the NHS, a lot of people have Blue Prism, and we're seeing a lot more interest and a lot growing at the moment around the Microsoft technology, so the Power Automate technology as well. But with Thompson's, we're talking specifically about UiPath as a technology. We can help organisations identify the right technology, but we typically work with, or we've historically worked with a lot of organisations who have implemented and are then looking to scale their use of automation.
Thanks for that. Thanks for your questions. Keep them coming. We were talking about process. I want to come to you, Mark or Gavin, because I feel like this is a really key stage. What sort of work do you do at this stage? I understand from Peter that you were very thorough, that you came into the office, that you really took time to understand how the firm worked. Are you able to talk me through what that looks like? What are the sort of key things that you have to hit when you're starting to understand a firm's processes and start to unpick them?
Yeah, so I can kick off on the processes, and then Gavin can go into the involvement once you're getting into the process in detail. So yeah, you asked Peter about identifying the process and how you're moving forward from that, and what process you can have, you should be prioritising. In a lot of organisations, it's who's got the biggest stakeholder and the biggest voice in the organisation as to like, this is what needs to be done and what's the biggest imminent problem. We do help a number of organisations actually run process discovery workshops. We've got a very succinct business case format. We can help organisations understand what processes are potential candidates and qualify those very quickly, and then run through the business case. And that's a time motion study. How often is this process or this activity done? How long does it take a person to do it? Is it a good candidate for being automated? What are the potential savings in time? And have they got other tasks and activity and work that is a higher priority that you need to move these people onto? They're all essential elements of the business process. So yeah, that's some of the early bits of identifying the process. Once we do that, we have that pipeline of process to work through. We engage with the subject matter experts, the people who are actually doing the work. So in this case, it was somebody that's worked in the finance team. We run a video session with them where we actually record the process running end to end. We look at the business rules, the potential exceptions that are in there, and we understand the process from end to end, and we map that out at granular detail. So yeah, we are really looking for people that have a standard operating procedure, but may not have it documented into the level that actually allows them to optimise and really understand the process. And actually, yeah, if somebody else new joins the team, it has to be done by word of mouth rather than documented. So there's a lot of value in just doing the process and getting this documented for the business and organisation. And then we look to optimise the process, because it's not just the case that actually you should pick up all the elements of the process and put it straight into a robot. There's opportunities to optimise that process, to deal with batches of work in a more efficient manner. So we deal with a as-is process, and then we map out a to-be process that is optimised for automation and actually potentially can deliver more value back to the organisation. And once we've done that, then it hands over to, well, Gavin's very much involved in that process and the team are very much involved in that process. And once we've done that, then it's a case of starting the development, and I'll hand over to Gavin to give a bit of overview of that piece.
Yeah, so to follow on from Mark, once you've got your pipeline of processes which have been assessed and scored, you then validate which ones you're gonna develop next, and that's then when you deep dive then into the team. So that's the point then where we need your team or your subject matter experts, say the experts in your processes. You could have 6 people on the team. They may all do it slightly different. So what you have to do is catch keystroke level. So every click, every read, every write, because what you've got to understand is a robot doesn't have a brain. So if you tell it to click something on the screen and that click isn't there, the robot will just say, can't do it, stop, move on to the next case. That's how robotics work. So it's really key to engage with your SMEs, get time with them and question every step, but not so much every step, but from experience, you can tell when somebody say clicks OK on a button, that's pushing something into the system. So there's a pop-up there. You got to just try and trigger memories of the expert, because they'll do this day in, day out. They will act like robots as they're doing it. And that what I call the 1000th case syndrome, or the variant that could cause a pop-up, doesn't pop up every day. It might pop up once every 3 weeks. But when that does pop up, the robot's not expected to see that. So the robot now goes, oh, I can't finish this case. I'm moving on to the next one. So the more these key areas and the more these variants you can capture and pull out of your SME's heads, the better your process will be at the end. And part of that then, as Mark has already mentioned, is pulling out the cases that shouldn't be worked. So some cases may have a status of closed. So if the robot opens that one up and it sees closed, same as a human would, it wouldn't try processing it because it's got closed in it. That's as an example. And you need to map those out. So when it gets to that point, the robot then sends an email, could not work this case. This is what I saw on the screen. This is business rule 1. Please work manually. The robot will clean up after itself, move on to the next case. And that's how it churns through them. And at the end of the run, then the robot will send out a list of all the cases worked with a success or failed in the reason. And the failed ones then are the ones that the team pick up to work. So a lot of this is we'll sit, as Mark said, take a recording, we'll go away, we'll map that out down to keystroke level. We will then play that back to the subject matter experts, where then they can pick up areas that maybe we've misunderstood or missed. And we'll go through a few sessions of that until we've got a clear as-is process. And that as-is process is then the manual backup. But as I said, it's key to get the people who are actually doing a process involved and engaged, and giving robots names and things. Just get everyone on board with it, because it's a new member of your team which is going to do all your boring work. So it's key to get people in the team enthusiastic about it, because I believe in these robots. They save so much hassle in teams. It's unbelievable.
There's a question for Mark from Andrew Wingfield. Thank you, Andrew. Law firms as clients may behave differently from other clients. What has he seen? What does he do to make automation outcomes easy for them to engage? Easy to engage with?
Part of this is, we've had experience of working with law firms from an IT and infrastructure experience. You come from a legal family for many years. So, with law firms, maybe not so much with the bigger ones, there's partners, it's stakeholders. There's a lot of people that have an ownership in that organisation. So we help build out the business case. We help make it really obvious. We help make it really visual. We've got ways to actually do the time and motion study, make it really easy to pull that information out and present that to the relevant stakeholders and people to make those decisions as well. And I think there's a business case question coming up a bit later as well. So it's understanding to a certain extent the legalist conversation, the jargon, how people talk, understanding the business and the processes, and then being able to apply that back in the language backed up with a business case. It just makes it easier to push it through, so everybody understands what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to get to, and the stakeholders, so the fee owners and the owners of the business, can see actually where they're going to get a return on that money.
And there's a question, I don't know if you've got a question that's public, I made this mistake earlier, but make it to everyone. I won't read out who this is from, but thank you for your question. Did the Thompson RPA project include an e-billing component?
No, we've not included e-billing. That'll be something that we're looking at in our upgrade to the finance system, but we're not doing that at the moment.
Okay. Peter Impey, thank you for your question. Automation using RPA for manual process like billing seems like a clear win. Were you able to predict and measure actual return on investment / ROI, aka ROI?
I'll be honest, we haven't done any specific calculations at Thompson. I know Mark has. Did you do some? You did some explanation, Mark?
Yeah, so we did the business case piece against it, time motion, working with the SME about the time it takes to do this work and activity, and we had a prediction. So it was done right. If we take a typical week for one person, 300 or so invoices to go through. That's not one person, it's actually across the team, but 300 or so invoices coming through on a certain week. And actually the figures were quite close to the accountancy practices standards of actually people could typically, the standard amount is they can process 45 invoices per day per FTE. And we know that it's anywhere between £3.50 to £15 per invoice to get it processed. In the predictions for Thompson's case, we managed to model it a bit to say, right, well, if you're doing this number of invoices, say 300, you could release 1.2 full-time equivalent people's time on just the stand on that amount. So that gives a very quick return. And if you look at how much a typical finance person costs within an organisation, this can go up much, much higher when you're talking fee earners, even when you're talking with people who are working in the legal area and other administration. If a finance person costs anywhere between 30 and 45,000, depending on where you are, over 3 years, releasing 1.2 people gives you 120, 130,000 pounds worth of return. Just that one small task, an element of the process. And actually what we see is RPA, once it's in place, provides a return on investment anywhere or typically between 3 and 9 months. It's well within a year. And actually with the cloud-based solutions that are out there as well, it's extremely easy to implement and access RPA as well. So it's the friction, the barriers to entry are becoming less and less. So it's becoming faster and easier to work and deliver.
Peter, I know that you have had, talking about releasing people, I know that you've made a real effort with your people to make it clear to them that one of this isn't a case of, we're faced in the media perhaps with the sort of robots replacing humans type thing.
Oh, yeah.
You've made a lot of effort with people, haven't you, internally, to reassure them that that's not what this is about, and to talk us through a little. I think this feels like the appropriate time to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously, when we started looking at RPA, you know, it was something that was at the back of our mind, how it could be received as a, you know, what are we looking to do? And obviously, you know, we're a trade union firm, so we have to be very sensitive around that. And, you know, there was never any consideration about, you know, using this to replace people, but we could understand how it could be perceived as that. And so it was just about making sure it was a clear communications and open and upfront with people from the start, really, about what we were trying to achieve. And it was about trying to make their job more efficient so they could add more value and do more interesting work. And there's no resistance whatsoever. And, you know, testament is how Gavin and particularly Gavin and Mark's work with the team. And, you know, they're best mates.
What sort of do they really feel the benefits? Because nobody wants to do, Gavin's talked about this, nobody wants to do that repetitive work. I mean, I just, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about billing or whether you're talking about low-level legal work, you know, to me, that stuff doesn't add any value. And actually, it means that you can go off and do something much more interesting. Are people feeling the benefit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, obviously I don't sit in the finance team doing billing, but, you know, it has changed their job and is continuing to change and develop their job to do other tasks and to move on, you know, because often when you're in a job role that's got quite a lot of heavy processing, you know, the could be other things more interesting or more challenging that you could get involved in, but you often don't have the capacity because you've got these 200 invoices to post. Yeah. So, you know, it's actually freeing them up to do those other things, and it's been well received.
So have we covered, I think, so we talked about ROI, thanks to the question, but have we covered you know, the process that's now, and do you feel, you know, the difference in the way that you operate, do you feel that we've covered that enough? Is there anything you wanted to add in terms of the way that the process differs now to the way it was before?
I think one aspect from the fee earner perspective is that, you know, like I said, they're not filling forms out or sending emails and Word documents. They're just keying some information into the case management system. So that's really quite straightforward and simple for those guys. So the instructions that the robot receives, it actually saves time before it even gets into finance, because that's a more efficient way for them to actually communicate that instruction to the finance team. So, you know, that's not been measured as part of the project, but it is clearly a very efficient way of working. And, you know, a lot of fee earners don't like skipping between different applications. They're in the case management system and they can submit the billing information within the case management system, so they're okay with that. So that's another added benefit of it. And obviously the robot does the processing at the back end and produces the bills. So yeah, it's quite efficient now, I think. But there's always scope for more, and obviously we've got different varieties of bills and everything else like that. So, you know,
that's what I was going to come. It's funny you mentioned that, Peter. What's next? We're going to just for people listening in. We're going to talk about what's next, and then we're going to quickly come on to a couple of other use cases, and then Mark's going to run through, as I said at the beginning, for those of you live, we're going to give. They've really generously offered a free automation of a task. So we'll start to wrap up. But what's next?
Well, there's plenty of further work we could do in finance, you know, let's say around credit control, possibly, you know, where you've got backlogs of credit control issues to sort out. And a lot of that is sending out standard chase letters and things for bills. That would be another obvious area where you could do some work. But personally, I'd like to have a look at the fee earner end of it and see what we could do around that, particularly again around chasing or checking for something. As I said, with the volume of cases that our fee earners handle, you know, invariably, you know, they don't get a report or they don't get confirmation that some instructions have been received or something like that. So the case management system's got all these tasks in them to check that something's been done. You know, the robot could do that equally as well. And if it hasn't received a confirmation, then it could kick out an email or a letter to somebody requesting, you know, that we get that instruction back in. So, you know, I personally like to move into that area next, but I'm sure there'll be another project in finance that they'll want us to look at. So
talk, Mark, just before we come on to, I'm quite conscious of people's time, and I want to make sure that we get around to you telling people how to take advantage of the free offer. What give us another couple of use cases.
Yeah, so, and Graham's asking about the application of RPA in business services, or being able to apply RPA in fee earners. So, you know, we're seeing this technology start to grow in legal. You know, it's still fairly early on. It's much more mature in some other commercial areas, and also within government and NHS, who have been some early adopters. But we are seeing more. So we're talking to legal firms at the moment. There's more, especially in the conveyancing process. So there's loads of tasks and activities, small tasks that could be handed off very quickly in the conveyancing process that could be automated. You know, one of the main use cases, and one that was put as a question up earlier as well, about new client onboarding. So there's a lot of activity that's involved in know your customer, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing. There's a lot of checks that actually need to happen in this, and it's quite a big use case. And you know, there's a lot of tasks and activities that are handed off to the secretaries, to paralegals, but we see a lot of friction in that process, an opportunity for errors that happen as well. And what automation is being looked at for the fee earners as well is to be able to remove some of that friction, remove some of the repetitive tasks that the fee earners are doing, and actually release the additional administrative team and staff from those repetitive tasks so they can add and deliver more value back to them as well. So yeah, there's a whole number of use cases out there. The join and movers and leavers is a very big one out in the market space as well. Another one that was brought up, so Peter and Andrew are on, have been saying about the anti-money laundering, the know your customer, the recurring checks that have to happen. So it's fine when you're bringing a customer on board in the first place, but actually that needs to be repeated either every year or every few years with those customers. And there's a great administrative overhead in doing that actually the fee earners could be potentially responsible for, especially with what they're dealing with for their clients as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to automate some of those fee earner elements to it. Really, there's a whole host of tasks and activities that can be automated fairly quickly and easily, can provide a massive return and rapid return on investment to the organisation, that then allows you to build iteratively and identify those more involved use cases that would then enable fee earners to actually be able to spend more time and deliver more and build more.
Yeah, this is an area of fascination for me. I could ask you questions all day, but I'm just conscious of people's time, and hopefully we'll have other chances to chat. But so fine. So what, for people that are on, thank you so much for joining us. What is it you wanted to say, Mark, in terms of offering a free automation of a task?
Yeah, so what we're willing to offer at the moment to help people on that journey is to automate a task. Yeah, so to use a community edition, a free edition of the software out there, and there's actually quite a few available. So as I say, the barriers to entry of doing this is getting easier and easier. The costs are being driven down. We will come in, we will engage, we will help identify a task within the process. And the conveyancing one is a good example, because there's a lot of instances where an address is taken out, you log into a web-based system, information is put in, and then a report is delivered, and that needs to be passed on as part of the file for that client. There's a number of small tasks like that could be automated fairly easily and fairly quickly. So what we're offering is a free service, a package service. It's limited to about 5 days worth of time and effort, where we will come in, help identify an initial task, build out the very high level business case, implement the community edition of automation software, and automate that task for the organisation. So you've got an internal case study relevant to showcase, and that does help with the partners and with the people who are looking to manage the budgets on these things.
How would people listening take advantage of that?
So from the invite, through LinkedIn, what we'll do is we'll send so everybody that said actually you can contact us afterwards. We'll send some follow-up information out with a summary of the offer, so people can respond to it.
Okay, all right. Well, contact us, and we can share Mark's or the guys' contact information, so I'm not afraid of sharing my email, caroline@legaltechnology.com. If you need to get hold of, if you want to, you can email me, and I will connect the two of you. Guys, listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking through this. I think obviously it's sort of the start of a journey, Peter. Looking forward to hearing the next instalment. It feels very much like the way the market should go. I didn't mean to suggest that the legal sector anything particularly negative, but it does feel like, from a client perspective as well, like it's just simply no longer acceptable to be doing these repetitive, to be charging either, and they won't tolerate it, whether that be in insurance, in low volume, low value, high volume, or actually it's going up the scale. So it's really timely conversation. So Mark, Peter, Gavin, and to everyone who's joined us, and to people listening in, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to having a similar conversation again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.